Hey everyone, this video has been on my to-do list for a while now, but thanks to real life, I haven't gotten around to making it until now. With Metroid Prime's 20th anniversary fast approaching, I decided to use that as a self-imposed deadline to get this video finished. Back in June 2022, right around the same time Nintendo's lawyers were reaching out to me about removing several Metroid remixes off of my YouTube channel, I had received something in the mail from a dear friend of mine. That person is Sabian, aka Z-Time. If you follow my YouTube channel, you'll know he is the producer of the Uncivilized Group's sample library, and that it was used extensively in the soundtracks for Metroid Prime and its sequels. It quickly becomes obvious that without Z-Time, Metroid Prime's music would have sounded completely different. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Korg Electribe ER1 that he used to make Uncivilized Grooves, which means this is the actual drum machine you hear in Metroid Prime. Not only that, Zock's original patterns and sounds are still stored in memory, which means we can actually listen to these iconic beats and noises from the actual piece of gear itself. Zock was also kind enough to send me his Ensonic DP2 parallel effects processor. The DP2 was used to enhance the ER1 and other gear in Z-Time Studio by adding various audio effects like delay, chorus, reverb, and phasers. You can clearly hear the DP2's phaser effect in the snares for the M-Room beat, which was used for Thardus' boss music in Metroid Prime. The Electribe ER1 not only provided beats, but it also acted as a MIDI sequencer and was used to control other devices in Z-Time Studio at the time, like his Electribe ES1 and Roland S770 samplers. Because of this, some of his ER1 patterns will play silent notes that are actually meant for other equipment hooked up via MIDI. As seen in my previous Metroid Prime drum machine video, the ER1 is sort of a hybrid piece of gear with its 4-voice synth engine and 4 PCM samples. Despite its simple architecture, the synth engine does allow for some unique sound design, and it is through this that Z-Time was able to create such original sounds to go along with these beats. The sequencer is also robust and allows for options like pattern length, swing, and triplet notes, which further adds to the complexity of these grooves. Let's take a look at the pattern coincidentally named Prime, which can be heard in 2 tracks from the first game, Phase on Mines and Versus Metroid. In Versus Metroid, this buzzing drone can be heard in the background near the end of the track. I never knew this effect was from the ER1 until browsing through these patterns for the first time, so it really surprised me to hear that sound coming from this machine. That's when I realized just how powerful the ER1's synth engine really can be. Note that just slightly changing the mod depth or any other oscillator parameter dramatically changes the sound. Z-Time also made use of automating several different parameters such as pitch or delay depth with the ER1's motion sequencing. In the case of the crash cymbal and hand claps heard in Phase on Mines, he manipulated the delay and recorded it to produce this timbre that makes it sound like it's in a tube. With the motion sequencing turned off, we are just left with the dry samples. Motion sequencing was also used in the white noise bursts heard in the Majestic B pattern, which you can hear in both Prime 1's main menu, as well as the first phase of the final boss fight. This is one of my favorite beats from the library, and it's just so fun to be able to mess around with this sound in real time. In my most recent single, Flood, I used this exact sound while manually manipulating the pitch knob for some of the transitions in the track. Without the smooth setting enabled, the pitch automation sounds completely different. instead of the knob values connecting smoothly, they are in trigger hold mode, which means that the knob value will stay the same throughout the note's duration. Another element used a lot in all three Prime games are the hi-hats from the beat entitled Dryad. These are famously used in tracks like Versus Flagra, Talon Overworld Depths, Torvus Bog, and the final boss from Metroid Prime 3. Shortly after I began browsing through Z-Time's ER1 patterns, I noticed there's several duplicate beats that are actually earlier versions of the final ones heard in the library. I made a spreadsheet labeling the patterns I recognized and marked which ones were different. With this, you get a sense of how the patterns evolved over time during the 6-month production period of Uncivilized Grooves. There's even several patterns that don't show up in the library at all. Some of them were used in Z-Time's own music instead. Even though Z-Time took excellent care of the Electribe, I still wanted to back up the pattern data from the machine just in case. And normally you would do this by just dumping the MIDI system exclusive or SysX data, which is something most synths and drum machines can do these days. But as it turned out, this proved to be much more challenging than I anticipated. I noticed that every time I would dump the ER1's data, it would come out truncated. Other people who own the first generation Electribe models have also reported this problem, and I confirmed that this also occurs with my own EA1, as well as the first ER1 that I owned, which I later gave to my partner Chauffeur after I received this one from Z-Time. While doing research on trying to fix this MIDI dump issue, I discovered a SysX file hosted on Korg's website containing new patterns and beats made for the ER1. With this download, I now had a known good ER1 SysX file, and therefore I was able to figure out the correct file size needed to produce my own working copy. Using the tail end of the SysX file from Korg's website, I grabbed my truncated data from earlier and merged it to create a new file. This created another problem, however, as now I was overwriting two of Z-Time's original patterns at the end of the file with data from Korg's website. To resolve this, I decided to carefully copy over those last two remaining patterns over to two blank unused slots on the ER1 so that nothing got lost when redumping the data and merging it with the tail end of the Korg website data. After many hours of troubleshooting, head scratching, and esoteric error messages, I am very happy to report that I was able to preserve a working backup of all Z-Time's pattern data from the machine. That about wraps it up for this video, but I plan on making more stuff in the near future with the ER1 as well as the Ensonic DP2. I wanted to show you more of the DP2 in action, but unfortunately its power switch is broken, and I would need to invest in a transformer to give it the proper amount of voltage required. Despite these issues, it should still be functional, so I hope to bring it back up and running eventually. To be completely honest, even after all these months, I'm still kind of in shock about all of this. My research that I've been doing these past few years has led me to interview and collaborate with the very person whose sounds played a major role in creating these soundtracks. There's no denying that this drum machine is a piece of video game music history, but more importantly to me, it's a drum machine from a friend. Whenever I listen to these tracks for Flagra or Parasite Queen or pretty much any of the boss music in the Metroid Prime games, I hear these elements in Kenji Yamamoto's music and I say to myself, I'm so proud of Zoc. That's his sounds in one of the greatest video games ever made. This is Cinemax. Thanks for watching.